In 1922, they opened a tomb sealed for 3,000 years. 6 months later, the man who paid for it was dead. By the decade's end, 12 more followed. Carved in stone was a warning. Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the pharaoh. This wasn't superstition. The ancient Egyptians weaponized their tombs. And what killed those men is still killing today. 9 cursed objects. 9 different deaths. All real.
Subscribe to the channel, or next I'll turn you into a mummy.
November 26, 1922. Howard Carter breaks the seal. Lord Carnarvon leans in from the darkness. "Can you see anything?" Carter's voice trembles. "Yes, wonderful things." Inside that tomb was gold everywhere, stacked floor to ceiling. And covering the mummy's face was 11 kilograms of solid gold inlaid with lapis lazuli. The mask that would become the most famous artifact in history. 3 months later, Lord Carnarvon is in his Cairo hotel. A mosquito bite. He reopens it while shaving. Infection spreads. Fever. Pneumonia. Blood poisoning. April 5, 1923. 1:55 a.m. Carnarvon dies. At that exact moment, every light in Cairo goes out. Citywide blackout. No explanation. And 600 miles away in England, his dog howls once and drops dead. The deaths continue. George J. Gould visits the tomb, dead within 24 hours. Arthur Mace, who broke through the sealed door with Carter, falls into a coma and dies in the same hotel as Carnarvon. Aubrey Herbert, Carnarvon's half-brother, dead within 5 months. Hugh Evelyn White hangs himself, leaving a note. "I have succumbed to a curse." By 1929, 11 people directly connected to opening that tomb are dead. But Howard Carter, the man who spent years inside, who unwrapped the mummy, who handled every artifact. He lived until 1939, died peacefully at 64. So what really happened? In 1986, Dr. Caroline Stenger-Phillip takes samples from sealed tombs. She finds deadly concentrations of mold spores, Aspergillus niger, Aspergillus flavus, fungi growing undisturbed for 3 millennia. When you break a 3,000-year-old seal, you release a cloud of spores directly into your lungs. For Carnarvon, who already had damaged lungs from a car accident, it was fatal. The Egyptians knew this. They'd watched tomb robbers die mysteriously for generations. The warnings weren't to scare people. They were to save them. But it gets darker. Recent analysis shows the resins used to seal Tutankhamun's mummy produced toxic vapors when exposed to air. And the golden mask itself? Coated in compounds containing trace arsenic. Not enough to kill from one touch, but handle it daily for months? Different story. In 2005, 3 Cairo museum workers preparing Tutankhamun artifacts for exhibition fell ill. Respiratory infections. 1 died. The curse isn't superstition. It's science we took a century to understand. June 1886. Gaston Maspero unwraps a mummy discovered at Deir el-Bahari. Most mummies are peaceful, hands crossed, faces serene. This one makes him step back. The face is frozen in absolute agony, mouth wide open, features twisted mid-scream. The body is wrapped in sheepskin, ritually impure in ancient Egypt. No name, just a label, Unknown Man E. This wasn't a burial. This was a punishment. Every researcher who studies this mummy reports the same thing. Intense nightmares, specific visceral dreams of suffocation, of being buried alive, of screaming and no one hearing. Dr. Zahi Hawass, former minister of Egyptian antiquities, refused to stay in the same room with it for long. In a 2008 interview, "Some objects carry weight. You feel it when you're near them." CT scans in 2008 reveal the truth. His airways show asphyxiation. Hands and feet bound so tight the bonds cut into flesh before death. Internal organs not removed, unthinkable for royal mummies. This man was buried alive. DNA testing in 2012 identifies him. Prince Pentaware, son of Ramesses III, part of a conspiracy to assassinate his father. The plot failed. His punishment was eternal suffering. But here's the disturbing part. The sheepskin wrapping was treated with mandrake and henbane, both psychoactive plants causing hallucinations and nightmares. Anyone who unwrapped him, who handled those textiles, absorbed trace amounts through their skin, enough to cause disturbed sleep, paranoia, vivid, terrifying dreams. In 2015, a Cairo museum conservator spent 3 days photographing the mummy. For 2 weeks after, she had recurring nightmares of being unable to breathe, of dirt filling her mouth. She requested a transfer. The screaming mummy isn't cursed, but the Egyptians made sure his punishment would continue for thousands of years, and anyone who came near would feel a fraction of his suffering. British Museum, London. Gallery 62. There used to be a painted mummy board displayed there. Catalog number EA22542. Everyone calls it the unlucky mummy, even though it's not actually a mummy, just the inner coffin lid of a temple singer named Amenare, dating to 950 BC. The face painted on wood is beautiful, serene, but those painted eyes follow you. Museum guards refused night shifts in that gallery. Visitors reported sudden nausea. Cameras malfunctioned. Then the death started. For British tourists bought it in Luxor in the 1880s. Before reaching their hotel, one accidentally shot himself. Another went bankrupt overnight. The third fell mysteriously ill. The fourth, Douglas Murray, got it back to England. His arm was amputated shortly after a hunting accident. He donated it to the British Museum. The photographer hired to document it died within a week. The delivery driver crashed and broke his leg. The curator who signed off on acquisition was found dead at his desk. Heart attack. Age 34. They displayed it anyway. Within a year, 2 security guards reported being attacked by an invisible force near the case. One quit. The other was found unconscious with no memory. A journalist from the Daily Express wrote a skeptical article mocking the curse. He died of sudden organ failure before publication. By 1921, the museum moved it to the basement, out of public view, except for one brief moment. In April 1912, a wealthy American collector commissioned a photograph to take back to America. He boarded a ship in Southampton on April 10, 1912. The ship was the RMS Titanic. Now here's the truth. Most of these stories can be explained. Coincidences, natural causes. But the British Museum has never put EA22542 back on display. Official response: conservation concerns. Former workers tell a different story. In 1990, a restoration team opened the storage crate. One member fainted, another vomited. The wood tested positive for fungal contamination, causing severe allergic reactions and respiratory distress. The curse was mold. Ancient, toxic mold growing for 3,000 years. The Egyptians treated funerary items with preservatives and resins that, over centuries, created perfect conditions for dangerous fungi. Touch it. Breathe the spores. Get sick. Call it a curse if you want. But it's bioweapon engineering that predates modern science by millennia. 1895. Amarna, Egypt. A German expedition finds something small in the sand. A scarab beetle carved from red jasper, smaller than your thumb. But the detail is extraordinary. Every segment visible. Wings etched so fine they look ready to unfold. On the underside, hieroglyphs. But they're wrong. Backwards. Inverted. Deliberately corrupted. One shows a man with his head on backwards. Another shows a heart being devoured. A third shows the sun setting into darkness. The expedition leader, Karl Brugsch, pockets it. By the time he reaches Cairo, he's burning with fever. He dies 3 weeks later. The scarab passes to his assistant, Hans Müller. He sells it within days to a Berlin collector, Wilhelm von Kessler. Within a month, von Kessler's entire family is sick. His wife develops an unidentifiable infection. His daughter stops speaking and stares at the scarab for hours. Von Kessler has nightmares of insects crawling under his skin. He tries to destroy it, throws it in a fire. The next morning, it's sitting on his desk, unburned, cool to the touch. He donates it to the Egyptian Museum in Berlin. That night, the storage room catches fire. Nothing damaged except the shelf holding the scarab. But the scarab itself? Not even smoke-stained. It ends up with occultist Aleister Crowley in 1904. Crowley claimed it whispered to him. He performed rituals trying to release whatever was inside. His mental state deteriorated rapidly. By 1910, he was convinced demons followed him. The trail goes cold until 1952. An anonymous letter arrives at the British Museum with the scarab and a note. "I inherited this from my father. I've had it 3 years and everything in my life has fallen apart. My marriage ended. My business collapsed. I can't sleep. Please take it. Destroy it. Just get it away from me." The British Museum examines it. The Jasper tests positive for cinnabar inclusions. Mercury sulfide, toxic when handled repeatedly. But the hieroglyphs aren't random. They're a curse formula, designed to bind the heart of whoever possesses it. The backwards writing? Intentional. In Egyptian magic, reversing symbols was believed to reverse fortune, trap the soul, poison luck itself. The scarab is currently in the British Museum's restricted collection. Catalog number withheld. Location withheld. Access requires written permission from 3 department heads. The last researcher to study it did so in 1998. Gloves. Ventilated chamber. 30 minutes per day for 1 week. Her report. Object shows deliberate contamination with toxic compounds. Recommend permanent isolation. In a 2003 interview, she would only say, "Some artifacts are dangerous because of what they contain. This one felt dangerous because of what it wanted." (1817) Giovanni Belzoni discovers the tomb of Pharaoh Seti I in the Valley of the Kings. Standing guard at the burial chamber entrance, a life-size statue carved from black granite. Seti wearing the double crown, holding the scepter and ankh. But the eyes are wrong. They're inlaid with something red. Not paint, not stone. A crystalline substance that catches light and seems to glow. Takes 12 men 3 days to move it. 2 tons of granite. During extraction, 1 worker falls and breaks his back. Another is crushed when the statue shifts. They ship it to England, installed at the British Museum in 1821. Within 6 months, 3 museum workers are dead. 1 falls downstairs. 1 has a sudden stroke. 1 simply doesn't wake up. Samuel Birch, curator of the Egyptian collection, notices something odd. Every time he walks past the statue, he feels dizzy, nauseous. He starts taking longer routes to avoid it. Other staff report the same. Headaches, vertigo, a feeling of being watched. In 1834, a chemist analyzes the red inlay. His report is disturbing. The substance is a mixture of realgar, arsenic sulfide, and cinnabar, mercury sulfide, both extremely toxic. But it's worse. The black granite itself contains naturally occurring uranium. Not enough to be immediately lethal. But if you stand close for hours, day after day, year after year, you're absorbing low-level radiation. The ancient Egyptians didn't understand radiation, but they understood certain stones made people sick, and they used them deliberately. In 1891, a night watchman reports seeing the statue breathing, the chest rising and falling. He runs out and never comes back. In 1923, a conservator touches the statue's face without gloves. She develops a rash that spreads up her arm. Treated but never fully goes away. She dies of skin cancer 15 years later, starting at the exact point she touched the statue. The statue of Seti I is still on display. British Museum, Gallery 4. You can see it right now. But the placard has a small notice at the bottom. Do not touch. Radioactive material present. The curse is real. It's just written in the periodic table. 1881. A Luxor dealer approaches a British collector, Edward Flint, with ancient papyrus covered in hieratic script. Not a book of the dead. Not funerary text. The dealer won't explain what it is. Just says, powerful, dangerous, promise never to read it aloud. Flint laughs it off. He's a scholar. He purchases it for an absurdly low price. Back in his hotel, he unrolls it. Dense text. Diagrams of human figures with internal organs exposed. Geometric patterns. Star charts. And repeated throughout in red ink. To bind the living. To wake the dead. To call that which hungers. It's a ritual text for creating sacred guardians. Traps for tomb robbers. Not physical traps. Psychological ones. The papyrus describes treating objects with compounds causing hallucinations, paranoia, violent delusions. It lists plants, henbane, mandrake, datura, how to distill their essences and apply them to cloth, wood, stone. But the disturbing part? It describes consecrating these objects by exposing them to the dying breath of someone being executed. The belief was that fear and rage would be absorbed, creating a cursed artifact tormenting anyone who touched it. This wasn't mythology. This was a manual for ancient psychological warfare. Flint translates for 3 days. By the end, he's barely sleeping. Vivid nightmares. He writes in his journal, I understand now why the Egyptians feared their own magic. This knowledge was never meant to be recorded. He tries to donate it to the British Museum. They refuse. Text of an occult nature, potentially hazardous, not suitable for collection. The Louvre refuses too. Finally, the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg accepts it in 1884. In 1893, a junior curator is assigned to translate it. He works for 2 weeks, then stops coming to work. Colleagues find him catatonic in his apartment, staring at the wall, muttering in what sounds like ancient Egyptian. He never recovers, spends the rest of his life in an asylum. The papyrus is sealed in a lead-lined box and moved to the deepest vault. In 1952, the KGB gets interested. They want to know if it contains psychoactive formulas they can weaponize. A team of scientists gets access. 2 commit suicide within a year. Another develops schizophrenia. Project abandoned. In 1999, a historian views it under controlled conditions. Gloves, ventilated room, 1 hour per day for 5 days. Her report, the ink tests positive for alkaloids consistent with henbane and datura. Simply handling the papyrus without gloves would result in absorption through skin. Prolonged exposure would cause hallucinations, anxiety, delusional thinking. The Egyptians didn't need magic. They had chemistry. The papyrus remains in the Hermitage's restricted vault. It's never been fully photographed, never been digitized, and according to museum policy, it never will be. 1881. The mummy of Pharaoh Psammetichus II is discovered, almost perfectly preserved, but coated in a strange resin unlike anything archaeologists had seen before. Within weeks of handling, museum staff report respiratory illnesses, severe coughing, burning sensations in their lungs, high fevers. The mummy is sealed in a glass case, but the damage is done. 3 of the original handlers develop chronic lung conditions. 1 dies within the year. Chemical analysis in the 1920s reveals the resin composition. It's a mixture of pine resin, frankincense, myrrh, and something else. Something that, when exposed to air after thousands of years, releases fumes similar to formaldehyde. The Egyptians used this mixture intentionally, not just to preserve the body, to protect it. Anyone who tried to unwrap the mummy would be exposed to toxic vapors. But there's another layer. In 2011, researchers using modern spectrometry find traces of natron salt mixed with compounds from the castor plant. Ricin, one of the most toxic substances known to humanity. The mummy was essentially a chemical weapon. Touch the wrappings with bare hands, you absorb toxins through your skin. Breathe the dust from unwrapping, you inhale poisonous particles. In 2003, a museum conservator in Cairo spent 4 hours cleaning the glass case containing the mummy. She wore gloves but no respirator. Within a week, she developed a persistent cough and chest pain. Doctors found scarring in her lungs consistent with chemical exposure. The mummy of Psammetichus II is still displayed at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, but the case is hermetically sealed, and museum policy states it can only be opened in a specialized lab with full hazmat protocols. The warning on the display reads, "Do not attempt to open. Hazardous materials present." 1929. Luxor. A small amulet is discovered in a minor tomb. It depicts a winged demon with a human face, carved from black stone. Intricate detail. Eyes inlaid with what appears to be red glass. The excavation team leader, James Whitmore, pockets it. That night, he has the most vivid, terrifying nightmare of his life. He's being suffocated by something with wings. He wakes up gasping, drenched in sweat. The nightmares continue, every single night. After a week, he can't sleep. He's seeing things in shadows, hearing whispers. He tries to get rid of the amulet, throws it in the Nile. The next morning, it's in his suitcase. He buries it in the desert. It appears on his nightstand. Desperate, he gives it to a local antiquities dealer. The dealer takes it. 3 days later, he's found unconscious in his shop. When he wakes, he has no memory of the previous 72 hours, and he's covered in scratches he can't explain. The amulet bounces between owners. Each experiences the same pattern: vivid nightmares, paranoia, unexplained injuries, scratches appearing overnight, the feeling of being watched. In 1967, a paranormal investigator named Marcus Webb acquires it. He believes he can cleanse it through ritual. He spends 3 nights with the amulet, documenting his experiences. His journal entries become increasingly incoherent. By the 3rd night, he's writing in symbols that don't match any known language. He's found the next morning, catatonic, clutching the amulet. Medical examination reveals something shocking. His fingertips test positive for a plant-based toxin, specifically extracts from the deadly nightshade family. Analysis of the amulet reveals the truth. The black stone is porous. It's been soaked in a mixture of psychoactive plant compounds: henbane, belladonna, datura. Over centuries, these compounds crystallized into the stone's surface. Anyone who handled the amulet with bare hands would absorb these substances through their skin. The effects: vivid nightmares, hallucinations, paranoia, the exact symptoms every owner reported. The amulet is currently held in a private collection. The owner keeps it in a sealed glass case and refuses to touch it directly. When asked why he keeps it, he simply says, "Because someone has to. If it gets lost, someone else will find it, and they won't know what it can do." 1888. Beni Hassan, Egypt. Archaeologists discover something that shocks even seasoned Egyptologists. An underground chamber containing not dozens, not hundreds, but millions of mummified animals. Cats, monkeys, birds, crocodiles. Stacked floor to ceiling, wall to wall. Tunnels extending for hundreds of meters. The excavation team enters without proper protection. Within hours, several are feeling ill. Headaches, nausea, difficulty breathing. By the end of the week, 3 are hospitalized with severe respiratory infections. The chamber is temporarily sealed. When they reopen it with basic protective equipment, they understand why the ancient Egyptians had inscribed warnings all around the entrance. Sacred ground. Do not disturb. Divine punishment awaits. The mummification process for millions of animals created a concentrated environment of biological hazards. The natron salts used for preservation, the resins, the oils, and most dangerous of all, the decomposition. When you have millions of organic bodies sealed in a confined space for thousands of years, you create a breeding ground for bacteria, fungi, and molds that modern medicine had never encountered. Spores that had evolved in complete isolation, becoming more potent, more dangerous. One of the excavators, Harold Jones, developed a respiratory infection that doctors couldn't identify or treat. Progressed rapidly. He died within 3 months. Autopsy revealed his lungs were filled with a fungal growth that had literally consumed the tissue. The cat mummy chambers became notorious. Several more excavation attempts were made over the decades. Each time, team members fell ill. In 1932, an entire crew of 12 workers had to be hospitalized. 2 died. By the 1950s, the Egyptian government sealed the main chambers permanently. Too dangerous. Too many casualties. But the story doesn't end there. In 2004, a team of archaeologists with modern hazmat equipment and biological safety protocols attempted to map the chambers using remote cameras. The footage they captured showed something disturbing. The mummies weren't just deteriorating. They were moving, not physically moving, but shifting, collapsing, releasing clouds of dust and particles into the air. Every movement releasing more spores, more toxins into an already saturated environment. The team's report concluded, the cat mummy chambers represent perhaps the most concentrated biological hazard in archaeological history. The ancient Egyptians created, intentionally or not, a weapon that becomes more dangerous with time, not less. Today, the entrances are sealed with concrete. Warning signs in multiple languages surround the area, and local authorities have a standing order. Anyone attempting to enter without proper authorization and equipment will be arrested. The sacred cats of ancient Egypt are still being protected, not by curses, but by the deadliest defense nature and chemistry could create. 9 objects, 9 different mechanisms, all serving the same purpose, protecting the dead from the living. The ancient Egyptians weren't primitive. They were brilliant. They understood that you didn't need magic when you had biology, chemistry, and psychology. They knew which plants caused hallucinations, which minerals were toxic, which preservation methods created biological hazards. They weaponized their tombs not with supernatural curses, but with science we're only now beginning to fully understand. The warnings carved in stone weren't superstition. They were user manuals for deadly technology. Death on swift wings wasn't a threat. It was a description of airborne pathogens. Divine punishment wasn't supernatural. It was toxic exposure. And here's what should terrify you. We've only explored a fraction of Egypt's buried history. Thousands of tombs remain sealed. Thousands more objects lie undiscovered beneath the sand, each one potentially carrying its own defense, its own curse, its own science. The ancient Egyptians built their civilization to last for eternity, and they made sure that anyone who disturbed that eternity would pay the price. Some doors were meant to stay closed, some secrets were meant to stay buried, and some curses are just science we haven't learned to fear yet.